So I want to talk about the tapers that I want to create on the legs for the kitchen table. The legs right now are 3 inches square, and I want to start the taper 5 inches down so I can allow for the apron that goes around, the skirt that goes around underneath the top. And I wanted to go 5 inches down and taper in a 1/2 inch. So it'll be 3 inches to 2.5. And I wanted to do this using the micro jig accessory table on the table saw, but the table saw blade only goes up 3 inches, and this is 3 3/4. So I had to change my thoughts there and then do it on the bandsaw. So we've created this jig, put these clamps on it. I put a mark, so I lined them as a reference point 5 inches down on that same mark, and each time I'm going to do one side, rotate it, do the other side. I will save the piece that falls off and put in there and clamp it underneath to keep them in the same level. So let's go to the bandsaw and I'll show you that jig. So I have to do 8 tapers all together, 2 on each side. I'm doing the tapers on the inside of the table, not the outside. And I'll just round over that edge. And then I'll either run these through the joiner when I'm done, or I'll just go to the sander and sand them. Stay on that fence because it drifts off there. No, let's go push it forward. Okay, so what I've done is this jig that I made for the micro jig clamps, or this base, is 10 inches wide. So I set from the inside of the bandsaw to the fence 10 inches. And then I'm gonna ride that up against the fence, and then in theory, it's gonna start trimming around 5 inches down from the top till it tapers it down to 2.5 at the bottom. So we'll go ahead and leave this running. I'm not turning the dust collector on just for sound purposes. I am gonna wear eye protection. And I had to put these clamps a little bit out of the way because they were getting in the way and hitting the edge of the bandsaw. So I did have to angle these and get them out of the way. So here we go. I'm gonna save this piece I'm gonna put this piece underneath here when I cut the next one and clamp that in there. Okay, so let's go do that. So you can see here my 5-inch line down from the top, which it actually started the taper back a little bit further, which is no big deal. But I put an X on the side that I want to trim off on the 2 inside corners when I lined it up. So what I'm gonna do is unclamp this one, unclamp all 3 of them, and the X is the side that I need to trim. So being that this side is already tapered, I'm gonna put the X side, my flat side, down underneath this one, and that's hopefully gonna keep that nice and level when I go to do the next piece. So I'm gonna line this 5-inch line down from the top against my indexing line there. I'm gonna slide it up against the back of my fence on the back side here. And then I gotta make sure that I put these clamps out of the way so they don't hit the bandsaw guard. So I'm gonna slightly taper that one and angle it. I've already done the other 6, the 7. This is the last one to do here. So I'm just gonna slide this over. And I wanna make sure that board lines up on the end there. Okay, sorry for my hands. Okay, so now that's all clamped up. Let's go back to bandsaw, cut the last taper. Okay, now all the tapers are cut. Let's see what they look like. Okay, so now I've got all the pieces with a slight taper on it. It's hard to see, but it basically goes from 3 to 2.5 on the inside. I do have bandsaw marks, machine marks, on the 2 inside pieces. So I have a couple options. I can go to a sander and sand those and get rid of those, or I'm thinking I might just run these over the joiner and clean these up a little bit more, and try to straighten that out a little. Not that it's bad. I mean, it's done with the bandsaw blade, but there's definitely saw marks. So let me run these over the joiner one time on each of those corners, and we'll see what that does to it. So what I've decided to do, I don't know if you can see it here, I put the taper side to the back of the infeed table of the joiner. So you can see where it's lifting this up. I don't want to push that down because I'd be trimming some off that. So as I do this, I'm putting the tapered side down on the table, and I'm going to slide that through, and it'll start cutting closer to that 5 inches and bring that down. And that should be pretty even because they cut it with the jig on the bandsaw, so it should be pretty straight. My number one goal is to get rid of the saw marks. So I'm going to do that on one pass on each side. We'll see how that looks. If it needs more, I can do more. So here we go. So definitely got rid of all those the bandsaw marks, and I can just sand to the rest. I didn't quite hit that 5-inch line, so I could probably do another pass and do that, but these are uniform and consistent, so I'm gonna go with that. So I don't know if you can see that, but it goes from 3 inches to 2.5 on the inside. So I got the legs all tapered. I ran them all over the joiner. I ended up running them 2 passes on each side because that brought me closer. I originally marked these at 5 inches, but my apron's only going to be 3. So when I ran them over the joiner, it tapered a little bit more, and I'm closer to the 3 inches here of the square for the apron. And I ended up being 3 and 2 3/8 at the bottom, which is fine. So when these go together, you can see the taper there, that it comes in some on the inside. And then I'll just round these edges over, and then I've got to cut the apron to go around the top to help hold it together, brace the legs. So I've got a little bit more to go. So these are the legs for my kitchen table, which I've got a couple coats of the wipe-on polyurethane on. So this is actually the top of it, and these will go underneath, obviously, but so you can see what I'm doing. The solid black walnut, 1.5 inch thick top. I'm using a wipe-on polyurethane on the top. It's been kind of cold out, so I'm gonna put more coats on it when it's a little bit warmer, hopefully. So I've been procrastinating on these legs for a while because I didn't want to freehand them on the bandsaw since they were too big to cut on the table saw. So luckily I remembered that micro jig, and that worked awesome on creating those. And then the joiner cleaned up all the bandsaw marks. So I'm very happy with the legs.